Hello, everybody. RMJ Movie Reviews Incorporated. Back with another review. Back with a special request review. I'm gonna do Harlem Nights today. Harlem Nights is kind of that period of Eddie Murphy's career when Eddie Murphy kind of seemed like his career was on a downslide, because up until that point, you know, he had all these string of hits that were just bam, bam, 48 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop, Raw, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Coming to America. I think Golden Child did okay. And then Harlem Nights hit, which was going to be looked at as this really, really huge financial hit, I assume, based on the fact that we have Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, Red Fox. You've got Robin Harris is in this. I mean, you've got just a talented array of talent behind this production. Now, nobody attack me here. I'm looking at this from a filmmaker's point of view and looking at it as an adult watching the film now versus a 9-year-old when I first saw the film. And like everybody else, I grew up with, Eddie Murphy when he was at the pinnacle. I grew up with Richard Pryor, but the Richard Pryor I grew up with was different than the Richard Pryor my parents grew up with. I kind of grew up with, Superman 3, Bustin' Loose, Critical Condition, Hear No Evil, See No Evil, Richard Pryor, versus the ones that my parents grew up with. Kind of from my age group, Richard Pryor was kind of marketed as kind of a cuddly kind of comedian, which I didn't realize until I got a little bit older that he was, much more like raw kind of comedian. I'm strictly talking about this film. I'm judging it from a film standard. I'm not judging it from the comedic bits or nostalgia for all the comedians and character actors in the film. I'm gonna be hard here, and and another thing about Harlem Nights is this was the first movie Eddie Murphy had directed. I don't think there was too much money riding on it, but it had a $30 million budget. And, from all accounts, I remember reading that this movie was a bomb, but it actually grossed $60 million. So, $30 million. So it still made a profit and it made its money back. But of course, Eddie Murphy, his movies prior to Harlem Nights were doing like, 150 million, 200 million in the United States. Beverly Hills Cop 2 and Coming to America just shot through the roof, man. I mean, those movies were spectacular financial hits. So I think when Harlem Nights hit, in terms of $60 million is still a good amount of money, obviously. And for any of us poor folk out here, I mean, we could feed a whole village with that kind of money. But of course, we're talking about Hollywood and it's Eddie Murphy, so they were greedy and they wanted. Apparently, that was a bomb. But looking back on Harlem Nights now, just looking at it as a film, I'm judging it without the nostalgia, without me and my cousins and friends sitting around laughing at all the jokes. This movie's it's a very flatly directed movie, and I think part of the problem is that Eddie Murphy directed it. I know it was his first film. To my knowledge, I don't think Eddie Murphy has directed anything since Harlem Nights. Not to say that he couldn't improve, but when you're writing, directing, and acting, and then you're working with your idols, because I know Eddie Murphy said Richard Pryor was one at Red Fox; they were his idols. Eddie Murphy was juggling a lot. I think a much better choice to direct the film would have been probably Robert Townsend. Maybe Mario Van Peebles, maybe Reginald Hudlin, who did House Party, the first one. Spike Lee, no, because Spike Lee is like a little bit too, well, at least back then he was just a little bit too serious about his filmmaking to direct this movie with these comedians. But the movie's very flatly directed. A lot of very just boring setups. A lot of the setups is, and don't get me wrong, the setups are, I think the setups are, how can I put this? I think the setups are good if you're a person who, what Eddie Murphy was, making a first time film. But I think with the amount of talent that you have in this film, and obviously the only thing, to me, in my opinion, that saves the movie is the comedians and the actors. It's their energy that they bring to the film that saves it, because the storyline and the writing is just, I don't think it's very good. I really don't think it's very good. And I'm separating the actual actors and their performances and the comedic bits from the actual directing and the writing. These are two different ways I'm going to hit this film. Obviously Richard Pryor was sick at this time. I think he had already kicked his habit by then, but you can even tell in a lot of the shots, Richard he's not moving very far. There's a lot of shots where he walks to certain points, then he stops. And a lot of the movie is him standing in one place, or there's shots with him just sitting down, and that's kind of how this movie is shot. There's a lot of shots of just actors placed in positions and you shoot. There's not a lot of, and don't get me wrong, I'm a filmmaker. I know dolly shots. Dolly shots are hell, and they take a long time to set up. So I understand that. There's not a lot of movement with the camera. It's just very flat. You know what I mean? And I think that the villain in this movie, I think his name is Michael Lerner. He's been in tons of stuff. The guy's a great actor. Good villain. He plays a typical Italian mob guy. Boring villain. For me, I think it would have been much better if Danny Aiello, who plays the corrupt cop, I think he should have been the main bad guy. Because Danny Aiello, I will say my favorite scenes in this movie are the scenes where Danny Aiello is kind of going at it with Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy. Those scenes are really fun. There's one scene in particular I really like where Danny Aiello comes to the club and it's Richard Pryor, him and Eddie Murphy talking. And Danny Aiello kind of goes to Eddie Murphy. He goes, "Oh, quick. Like, you move fast." And Eddie Murphy goes like, "Well, no, quick to get your ass whooped." And Danny Aiello kind of shoots back at him and goes, "No, I think what you really mean is," what did he say? I think he said, "You be real quick to get your ass whooped." It's a really, that kind of stuff is a good moment. But again, the way it's shot very boring. But those kind of scenes are what keeps Harlem Night alive. And of course the comedic bits. And the writing, I don't think is very good. There's really there's a lot of really strange things the characters do. There's like a scene where the big mafia guy, Calhoun, I think is his name, he tries to get Eddie Murphy to work for him and all this kind of stuff. Eddie Murphy goes, and then Eddie Murphy almost gets killed by Arsenio Hall, which, everybody's seen the movie. Eddie Murphy didn't kill Arsenio Hall's brother. But when Eddie Murphy goes back to the club and talks to Richard Pryor, he doesn't even tell him what happened. And it's like, but he then later on, when Jasmine Guy tries to, sleeps with him and he kills her, then he tells her. And there's a lot of just things in the movie that I think the characters do things that don't make much sense to me, at least from the good guy's perspective. It kind of doesn't really. The first act is just very slow and just really. The movie almost to me looks like that somebody at Paramount, a producer or somebody, came in and shadowed Eddie Murphy, because by the time it gets to the second and third act, things kind of pick up and things get going a little bit more. I mean, again, still average by the numbers, club gangster plot story or whatever, but the movie does pick up. But that first act is just, it's not brutal because the comedy bits are so funny. It's just, it's my main problem with this movie. I just think the direction is flat. It's directed in a boring way, and I just don't think the story is very good. I think for the amount of talent that's in this film, I just think it should have been just a better script, and I think a director with more experience would have taken this. I really think Robert Townsend would have been a better choice to direct Harlem Nights. But you know, I know Siskel and Ebert kind of had a problem with the movie where they said, well, they talk like it's present times. That didn't bother me that they talked like it was in present times and it was supposed to take place in the I don't know, it was the 30s or the 40s or something. That didn't bother me. You know what I mean? And I appreciate what Eddie Murphy was trying to do. You know, he was trying to do something different. You know, with all this array of talent, I just don't think that he was a strong enough director to pull that off. And the actors, you know, regardless of how weak the script is, the actors really keep this thing alive because the comedic bits in this thing are hysterical. I mean, they're great. I mean, you know, you got, of course, we all remember the classic bit. But I mean, there's so many classic moments. Of course, we remember the classic moment where the dude goes, "I hate kids," and Eddie Murphy as a kid shoots him in the head, and you know, Richard Pryor goes, "Why don't you go home and brush that tooth?" I mean, you know, and then where Eddie Murphy is fighting Della Reese, and you know, he goes, "I'll blow that knob, crusty thing. Now put the razor away." You know, those scenes, and a lot of good scenes in there. You know, and then of course we cannot forget Sunshine. That part of the movie, now that I'm older, listening to the dialogue in that scene is hysterical. I mean, my man sleeps with the prostitute, and then he calls his wife and he goes, "I'm not coming home no more," and just hangs up the phone. That kind of stuff is good. But and of course, the bit with Arsenio Hall where he goes, "Oh, quick is mine," and then he's shooting the machine gun. And I to this day, that bit is still funny when the guy shoots the one gun and Arsenio Hall takes his hat off and goes, stop that shit. That is so funny. So I have no problem with the comedic bits in the film. The comedic bits are classic. You know, we got the Expendables, the Avengers style of an ensemble with black comedians. You know, it's just that I don't think Eddie Murphy was a good choice to handle this film. I think it needed a more experienced director, and the script should have been tightened up a lot more. You know, you needed somebody with it, and even like I was saying before with New Jack City, you can look at New Jack City and see how vibrant that film is, how much energy is in that film. It's very upbeat, even though the storyline is very dark. But the movie is very upbeat. It has an energy to it, and that's what Harlem Nights doesn't have. The energy level is so just like it's just there's no energy in the movie. You got energetic actors in a movie that's shot with no energy, and that's the problem. Is the writing and the directing. You know, Eddie Murphy just wasn't experienced enough to handle this, and I think somebody like Robert Townsend or Mario Van Peebles would have been able to bring, you know, something stronger to it. So, you know, that's, and as far as the movie only being, I guess, a moderate success, I think part of that has to do with the fact that everything before then that Eddie Murphy was doing was kind of very commercial pieces. You know, Harlem Nights is a commercial piece in terms of the comedians that are popular in the black community, but you know, Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, and Red Fox does not necessarily might not be as popular with a worldwide audience or a white audience or whatever you want to call it, multicultural audience. You know, it might be very much exciting for us as black viewers, but not for everybody else. And you know, it was a period. It's supposed to be a period piece movie too, so I think that's kind of why it. I'm not sure why the critics hated it like they did. I don't in any way think it's a horrible movie. I just think that it just needed the story needed to be tightened up, and somebody with more experience should have directed other than Eddie Murphy. You know, those are my two problems with it. But as far as it being the worst thing in the world, and it being, you know, I read some retro reviews where they were saying that it's so obnoxious, and you know, it's an adult comedy. You know, it's a comedy for adults, and it's a raunchy film. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The comedic bits are funny, man. They are funny. It's just that, you know, the comedy bits are funny, but everything else around it is not good, you know. So when there's no comedy on screen, kind of the feeling I had is that I didn't care, you know. And again, towards the end of the movie, when they kind of start fighting back against the gangster guy and this person is getting set up and they're doing this and doing that, I kind of got a little bit more invested. But outside of when they were cracking jokes in Harlem Nights, I just did not care. You know, other note too, I didn't realize that Herbie Hancock had did the music for this film, and you know the music is really, really classy. It's really nice, and I really like the music in this film. You know, and the costumes and all that are nice. It's just a misfire because you had a person who had never directed before, and there was just that was the misfire with Harlem Nights. So those are my thoughts on Harlem Nights. Again, like I said, the movie is hilarious. All the comedy works. All the actors do a good job. I don't have a problem with any of that. My problem is the actual script and how the movie was directed. That's my problem with it. Again, this is really more of a mixed review. I don't hate Harlem Nights. I like it, but I just like it. It's not my favorite Eddie Murphy movie by any means at all. But I still think it still has all the classic bits, you know, the classic comedy bits. Eddie Murphy picking up the gun from under the pillow and going, oh, and he kisses the gun. You know, all that stuff is great. But wrong choice for director and better script. So those are my thoughts on Harlem Nights. Again, it's still funny as hell. You know, it's great. Actors are good. Anybody who subscribes to my channel or who watches the review, who's a fan of Eddie Murphy or Richard Pryor, feel free, comment, give all your opinions on Harlem Nights, and we can all chat back and forth about it. Again, I'm not knocking the picture by any means. That's just my opinion on Harlem Nights. So we can have a discussion, and you know, those are my thoughts on Harlem Nights. I don't know what the next movie it is I'm gonna do. I haven't quite figured that out yet. So I'm gonna hit you guys with a surprise, but there's only a couple more days left in February. So it looks like the rest of my day off, you know, since I already got shopping and stuff out the way yesterday, is pretty much gonna be me chilling at the house, cramming a couple more movie reviews onto my YouTube channel. So yeah, feel free to subscribe, guys, and we can have movie talk and chat back and forth with whoever. And I love this stuff. So talk to you guys later. Okay, bye.